A warm welcome back to the Forensics Detailing channel. Today we're going to be delving into the subject of claying your car. So before we get started, as always, do not forget to subscribe. Our aim of this video is to talk about and demo out there on some test contamination, the effectiveness of traditional clay bar, clay Mitt media that's been around for over 10 years, and the newer kind of perforated clay media. Okay, so we've got three different types. Now, first of all, what is all this stuff about? What is clay bar if you're new to detailing? So when you wash your car, you clear off dirt and you get a clean panel. Certain types of dirt, namely fallout, embedded iron from brake dust and stuff like that, tar, adhesives, overspray, sap from trees, maybe concrete dust, although that's a bit of a odd one, a bug splatter that sort of, the actual gut part of it can sometimes need claying off, and general stuff which can't be washed off of the car and needs to be abraded off of the car with something that's going to pull it off of the surface. So that's what it is. Clay bar was originally conceived and invented, I think, in Japan for the body shop industry. When you're prepping a car to respray, say if you were respraying a section of the car and you're fixing a bit of paint and then you were relacquering an entire section, if it's covered in contamination, they wanted all that stripped off before they go buzzing back and sanding and prepping and all that sort of stuff. You need really clean. So as well as cleaning and degreasing, they notice there's all this stuff in the paint. That's how it's conceived. That clay that was launched in Japan, there was a worldwide, not a worldwide, I think there was a US patent on it. So US companies couldn't offer clay bar unless they licensed it through, I think it was a company called Clay Magic or Magic Clay or something. The rest of the world, I think you were free to make your own clay. I believe those patents expired back in 2013, but I'm not 100% sure on that. The bottom line is virtually all UK detailing companies have their own clay bar, but a lot of American companies don't, and they may still be using the original patented Clay Magic formula. I'm not sure, actually. I suspect they're probably not. So I think all the patent stuff has gone out the window. We then moved over and started seeing new forms of clay, which were kind of microfiber material typically, that were impregnated with some sort of clay-like film, which is a little bit sticky and a little bit grippy. Okay, so that was this generation. And then recently we see like a new kind of format where it's more rubberized and you have this perforated clay that can be applied, I don't know how it's put on, if it's sort of stuck on or melted on or what. And you can see it here in its application on a clay mitt with this kind of Rupes clay mitt thing. We'll talk about the pros and cons of each, okay? So that's a little bit about the history of this. So we know what clay does, we know what it's for. How often should you clay your car? Well, really, it's the only option really to take off that bonded contamination fully when it's there. So with this car, it never builds up because it's always protected. So I don't think I've clayed this for like 4 or 5 years and it's garaged. But typically, if you're using a car and it's left outside and it's picking up the miles, typically once a year, it benefits, I think, from decontamination. And of course, you can use chemicals that can strip some of that bonded contamination, like tar and glue removers and fallout removers, to help shrink it all. So there's the whole chemical decontamination side as well. So you clay when you need to remove embedded contamination. And we've covered how often. There's no real kind of set piece. Now, the thing with claying, the act of pulling contamination off the surface, and you're effectively wiping that contamination you've pulled off the surface over your car, that act scratches the paint at a very low level typically, and things like clay lube can help, and light pressure and technique and perhaps even the different formats can help reduce that. But as a general rule of thumb, after you've clayed off contamination of the car, you need to go back and polish out that fine scratching or marring that they call it. Lubrication helps, but of course lubrication reduces the friction between the clay media and the surface. So that reduction of grip, if you like, or friction, may help reduce marring, but won't help you actually pick up contamination. So you're better off. That's a whole subject area. Some people use water, some people use soap and water, some people use rinseless wash, some people use quick detailers or dedicated clay lubes as lubricants. Typically I'll use rinseless wash or soapy water just because it's the most affordable. Now, so claying for me is a precursor to then go on and polish, and ideally that polishing should be machine polishing because it's the most effective way to take out the fine clay marring. If you choose to polish by hand, if it's very light marring, you can improve it, glaze it up and get your finish back to where you personally might want it. But for me, with claying, it would be machine polishing because it will take all of that marring out with very little effort. Taking it out potentially on a car with lots of contamination that you've clayed quite aggressively, it would be hard work. So clay is a precursor to polishing. And as we said, the important thing to take away is that the act of pulling contaminants into this kind of media and dragging it over the surface scratches your paint. Yeah, it just does. Okay, so that's that. Now we're going to go on and do a demo of these. Now, if we come out here, what we've got is two sections, little dots of tar and a tar film, just as a little backup. And what I'm going to do is 10 passes of using each of these and see if I can see the difference. I've got a preconceived idea of how this will probably go, but the truth is I've got no idea. So our clay that we're using is Bilt Hamber clay. This is their lightest version. They do have a medium and regular version, and this is fresh and it's new. That's been used, and that's just been used once, just to make sure it's not brand spankers. So it's just kind of been wiped over the panel. We're going to use water as lube because we don't want to introduce any other variables. So I'm just going to cover the contamination in water. This is difficult to do with one hand. And I'm just going to cover the clay bar in water. And it's non-scientific, this, so it's going to be difficult to maintain same pressures and timings. But I'm just going to go up and down and clay through this, so I'm probably not going to get all the edges with this clay bar. We'll see how we get on. So what this isn't doing is lifting and pulling that off there. That dirt film is bonded, but it's getting through it. Can you see it starting to disappear? In fact, as the water gets thinner, it's disappearing it more. That is requiring a little bit of pressure. But there we go, it's starting to go now. Don't want to clay too much. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clay through the middle of this film and see how difficult it is to remove. Ooh, it sticks down when you hit it. I suppose it would, it's tar. But now it's starting to get through it. So you imagine if you've got a thick film of tar, which can happen on your car, trying to clay it all off would be an absolute nightmare. That's why I like going over this with something which melts that tar. It's going to be really beneficial. But this tar film is a lot thicker than what you would get on a car. So that's taken some effort to start getting through that film. You can see it pulling it all off. So we'll just go to a fresh bit of clay. We'll go through that again. That's starting to get through it now. It's taken some doing though, guys. So yeah, so the clay can go through thick tar film. It can get this clay, it can get this off here, but if you've got to kind of pressure in, so you imagine I was taking this off, I'd have to pressure and like really go at it. It's starting to come off. So you get an idea. That light clay is working. Now we'll take our second. Interested to see. I've got no idea what's going to happen here. Just lube it up with water. Now, one thing with this type of media, which is very important, is when the first generation of clay cloths and clay pads and all that sort of stuff came through, the first thing people were noticing, there was different forms of aggression with those as well, heavier ones, medium ones, finer ones. But when you go in hard on the panel, you get like a wet sanded look where it's hazing up the paint. And when you've got this fine texture in the clear coat, what you're actually doing is almost like wet sanding on the raised edges, and you start getting this hazing effect on the raised edges, and it was quite scary. So you had to be really careful with pressure and really rub gently. The problem we've got with something like this, which is going to be very, very stubborn contamination, is that it requires sometimes a bit of scrubbage. Oh, I just realised I'm cheating there, and I'm going at that other film. I want to go across it, but that is actually, it is starting to work on it. Let's just keep it lubed. Why is this stalling? Here we go, it needs to be upright. Just keep that lubed up. And we'll just keep going till I start to see it. Jesus. And I'm probably pressuring in more than I should be with this. I'm usually with these, the key is no pressure and just light and rapid. Whip over it. I must have rubbed that more than I've gone at it with the clay. I must have done. So you can see with the clay, it starts getting rid of it, whereas this really hasn't got rid of any of it. I'll go again. Let's just go, because it might be at some sort of turning point, and as we do this, we're kind of learning something. Let's just go a third time. Just not able to take that film off. Yeah, so what we'll do now is we'll just go across this. We're going to apply a little bit more pressure because we know it's going to need it. Let's see if we can get rid of this film. I just don't think it's shifting. I can feel it biting. There's a little bit of removal going on, but you could probably just see that on the camera, but it's not. I'm going in with some pressure, I'm breaking all the rules. I'm not worried about scratching here, I'm just trying to get this off. Knackered. My arm's starting to ache. It's not done much, but you can see it's doing something. But you can just see, in comparison with clay bar, if we need to, we can get that off quite rapidly. Look, it's just got more bite to the panel. You see. Let's go Rambo mode with this. So that's enough rubbing. So far we've learnt that the clay the clay, there's probably more pressure as well, but we'll talk about that. But the clay is definitely, if I had to scrub this contamination off of the panel so far, and I'll just demo it again on this little end piece. You know, if there's a little tar spot, I can go over it like this, and it's coming off. Yeah, you can see that. So that's interesting. Well, it's kind of, that's kind of what you'd expect really, isn't it? So let's just fold this so we've got a bit more usability. Right. I'm not expecting this to be any more aggressive, but you never know. Right, let's just, we've got our water on there, let's just go. So, it's just, I've got a bit of pressure, but I'm not going nuts. If you can, when you're using these types of things, it's best if you can use your hand rather than like your whole arm, because then you just get a lighter kind of like thing going on. But it's a bit difficult filming this. But I would say that is doing a good job. That has some bite and it's taking that, that's taking that off. That's impressive. That's actually doing the best job of removing this tar film. And if I keep going, it's really interesting. I didn't expect that. Yeah, even the heavy spots are coming off. The same variables, that's coming off quicker though. So look, to take these heavy spots off with the clay bar, oh no, okay, it can do it. Yeah, it is still quicker, but I'm losing a lot more pressure. Interesting. So yeah, the clay can do it, but there's a lot more pressure going on there. This is light pressure, and it's just taking everything off. In fact, we're nearly there with that panel. So let's just get a bit more water going. I think there's not enough in there. There we go. Bloody things. I got a feeling this is going to go through. It's going to go through this clay. It's going to go through this. Jesus, that's good. Look at that. So this clay, this perforated clay towel is good. Look at that. So all of even now, this you know, the amount of scrubbing I'm doing on this panel is too much, because it's a white panel. You know, you wouldn't see, but I'd be probably hazing this up a little bit. But the main thing is, I'm really not looking at that right now. I'm just looking at how well these shift off that tar film. For me, that's the win. That's the win. And just to make sure it's not some sort of inconsistency in the film, let me just work on this little bottom section here that you can see. That's really impressive. It's all coming off. Oh, okay. It's just a couple of little stains left there, but it's coming off, you know, it's coming off a lot easier with this than that. And I would say even that is less work to take off that than this. But this does do it, look. I'm just working on that right hand side, you can see it. So, Let's just bring these in. Let's bring these in. There's all sorts of flaws and all sorts of discussions to what I'm just showing you there. But there is also some really useful things, because you can get different levels of aggression with all of these. So for example, if I ever get overspray, I won't use the Bilt Hamber light clay. I'll use the regular clay because there's a big difference, and it strips off overspray and this light stuff doesn't. So this is the lightest form, but I still expected the lightest form of clay to be the most abrasive and the best at removing the film. But this, which I believe is like a mid-range clay towel, was really effective, and that was a lot more effective than that, which is the Farecla G3 one. So it could be the case that that's designed for lighter contamination. Yes, the dirt film, the tar film that I've got there is abnormally strong. If you had that much tar all over your car, you'd be a lunatic to try and to clay it off. You just get some tar remover on a cloth and wipe over panel by panel, wipe on a film into that tar and then wipe it off. You wouldn't, if you try to clay that sort of thickness off, you know, you'll be in trouble. So yes, but we've learned something actually, and I think we've learned that the star of the show is this product, just with regards to what we were trying to demo and what we were trying to show you, and that's surprised me. That's really surprised me. This is an AliExpress one. This cost me £3.70, and normally those AliExpress ones, normally anything like that that's mega cheap is rubbish, but that seems to be very good, very effective. So a summary for me of these products. The traditional clay bar, you've got some advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages, I think, is that whenever you have more contamination, I feel like you could get it off better with clay if you pick the right type of clay for the job at hand. And I also feel clay is better in smaller areas like the front bumper, where those cloths can't get into all the edges of all the little gaps and stuff like that. If ever I go and buy a new car and it's an old car and it's got clay, and I really want to clay it properly, even though it's going to take longer, I tend to use a clay bar. If I've got to detail a car in one day and I want to get around the car quickly, I tend to reach for the clay media, because most cars don't have tons of contamination, and most cars you're prepping them for a polish and you've got one day, so you've got about 20 minutes to get over those panels. That's when I find that clay media that you can cover ground with quickly comes into its own. The clay media, you could argue as well, you reuse it more. Traditional clay, after you've done 3 or 4 cars, or you've done a really bad car with it, you tend to dispose of that chunk of clay. You can then get a fresh bit of clay in your big block, which is an advantage as well to the clay bar, but you dispose of that clay more than you dispose of your clay cloths and clay media. Those clay cloths and clay medias do pick up more contamination over time, which seems to embed in the surface and is harder to remove. So they do tend to increase the amount of fine scratching over time than when they're brand spanking new. And in this test, that's been used a fair few times, and those two haven't, so it's a slight disadvantage. But interesting, yeah. I just want to, like you guys, I just want to take away from this that performed really, really well and was a lot more aggressive than I thought. So the only thing I sometimes think is, if I ever see contamination, it's those little knobbly bits that you can feel. I always feel clay, you can get those off better with clay. But Jesus, because you don't want to be pressurizing too much with these on those little knobbly bits. But no, in terms of actually how they abrade, that was really impressive. So there's an interesting video for you guys. I'm going to finish off getting the rest of that tar film off my panel, and I'm probably going to use that. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts, what you prefer, all that sort of stuff. Over and out.